So first of all, household as shared project. Work in the broad sense. It's always something we make together. And that this should be an attitude in everything we do, even though there's going to be a kind of division of labor unto achieving that shared work the best. I think it is critical that we start with that principle. We start with the unity. If there's going to be a division of labor, it's because we divide it so that we can do this one thing that we do together better.
Hi, I'm John Cuddeback.
And I'm Sofia Cuddeback.
If you're wondering whether you can really be friends with your spouse
and raise children into responsible adults with whom you have a relationship
and do what it takes to make a homestead, reconnecting with your body and the land wherever you live.
If you just want to think more about how to make a truly happy home in our trying times,
then The Intentional Household, a LifeCraft podcast, is for you. Join us.
A man's part in housework. It's great to be with my wife, Sofia. I love these conversations. It seems to me that this is something that deserves a closer look today, because it's challenging. It's really hard to find that balance. What are the principles for how we think about it, for those especially who are taking an approach where it's normally the wife and mother who's at home, and she normally is doing a lot of what we call housework. Does a father just kind of parachute every now and then, give a little hand? Should he see himself as more essential to this? What is his approach to that? What is their common approach to that and understanding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's challenging because the culture that we live in now is so different from cultures in previous years where the household, the work in the household and outside of the household was more contiguous and was more a work for the household. Now, because a man has to seek employment in a sphere that's completely external to the household, it's a little bit more challenging to come up with the ways in which the husband and wife can share a common life within the household. So I think it's worth talking about because it's not as obvious as it used to be.
So let's focus on what we're particularly talking about here. When we say housework, I think the main kind of thing that we have to figure out, or the thing will tend to be more the sticking point, and there's obviously other aspects, is the daily stuff. It's the cooking, it's the cleaning, it's the doing dishes, it's washing clothes, it's keeping the space
so what
well
you're
arranged.
Really talking about is housework, not necessarily the work of maintaining the household, which can involve other things like painting and washing exterior windows and caulking around windows and things like that, which obviously are part of the whole endeavor to maintain a household. But you're specifically talking about housework, which is the day-to-day activity of keeping it clean and tidy.
Yeah, exactly. Now, of course, so even you referred to work for the household, and which I would even there have just said work to maintain the house. Mm-hmm. Work to maintain the household is even broader, because of course the work that man's going out and doing in his job is to maintain the household. Mm-hmm. But even here, when we say housework, it's more than just any physical work done on the physical plant or the house. It's the regular stuff. Right? I mean, it's not the fixing the broken faucet, which is important, but it's not nearly as much of a kind of daily issue of the things that human life requires absolutely every day to keep people fed, warm, comfortable in a reasonably neat environment. And I think it's, interestingly, Wendell Berry once pointed out, it's this modern household has removed a lot of the more meaningful work and more left the things that tend to be more drudgery. And, so I think it's a very significant point that he's made there, where there used to be much more significant shared work in the home that the husband and wife are doing together. The cleaning, the things that can be more drudgery, it's not simple drudgery. I mean, I think we can still find a worth and a beauty even in that, but it is more drudgerous than raising food and the work that has more a kind of a rich, is more of an art, the other home arts, right? There's not so much an art to cleaning.
Wait, just a minute.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to take umbrage with that. There is an art to cleaning too, just like there is an art to chopping wood the right way, right? There's a real skill involved there. And I guess I stand up and I say that because I feel like I've transitioned from not having the skill to having improved in the skill. So it strikes me that
Well,
there really is an
good.
art in even things like dishes and keeping your house clean and so forth. I wonder if part of the difference in some of the other domestic arts you were talking about is these daily arts of household maintenance, like keeping the house work, is something that is done continuously over and over again and is constantly undone. And so I think that's what sometimes gives it the characteristic of drudgery, whereas something like chopping wood and putting it up, yes, that's hard, it's arduous labor, but you work toward the goal. There, you've got your huge wood pile. It's curing. Great, we're done. Now move on to the next thing. The kind of tasks you're referring to within the household are not like that, because they are done in order to be immediately undone. And I think that's the thing that sometimes makes them feel like drudgery, because you're it's not like check that box, move on to the next task. Check that box. I mean, obviously in a small way it is that way, but I think that's one of the things that can make it be hard, because you do it and then you watch it be undone, because that's part of the nature of those things. Dishes are done to be used again, and they're dirty and you're doing them again. And that happens in very quick sequence. Vacuuming and sweeping and, changing sheets and doing laundry. These are things that are it's never just done. Oh, I can put that away and not think about it.
Right.
So
that makes complete sense. If I follow up just for a little, push a little bit just on getting the clarification, because this stuff is obviously important. So now I see, from what you've said, I absolutely should recognize there is an art. Philosophical art is a know-how that takes determinate means to reach certain ends. But it's probably fair to say particularly the ones of cleaning. Right? There's an art, but that's about as low as the arts get. Right? In other words, it's less of a fulfilling. I love your point. It's intuitively, immediately clear that doing it in order to, and then it's just undone. Absolutely. Isn't it also the case that it's versus, for instance, the sewing that you love to do? There's more of a honed skill in your sewing of making something beautiful also. It's just, you don't so much think of yourself as honing your skill in doing dishes or honing your skill. Again, balance, but isn't it, I've made up the word drudgerious, but isn't there just, isn't part of the challenge here that it doesn't even engage the mind quite as much as the richer home arts did and still can? Is that fair, or what do you think?
Yeah, that's fair. I guess I just keep wanting to go back to it's not an art that I possess very well, cleaning the house. And I watch other women who are outstanding at it, and I realize, oh my goodness, that's a great way of doing it. That makes it better. Oh, and so I look at these other women who clean very, very well, and I feel to myself, there is definitely a skill here to be gained. And so, you're right. It's not as maybe refined or as maybe content dense, but I guess it depends on what perspective you look at it from, because if it's just about scrubbing toilets, then yes, it doesn't give you very much. But if it's about creating a space and an environment in which your family can flourish and be healthy, then there's definitely a way that you draw a pleasure or a gratification in doing it because of the bigger thing for which you do it. So, maybe from that perspective, the definition of an art, that it's a skill that you work at, and the more rich content-wise the skill you're working at, the more satisfaction it produces. It's true. Yeah. It's true that in order to derive satisfaction from cleaning and scrubbing the house, you have to keep the ultimate end in view. The people for whom you do it, and
I want to be clear that I'm not at all trying to suggest that has no value, has no dignity. I'm more saying that in the spirit of trying to understand the plight, the possible suffering that someone has of when not having the opportunity to fulfill one's mind as much and engage skills.
Absolutely.
So many things. We have to keep the right balance with the right attitude, right intention, right approach. I think we should think about how can we make even cleaning more of an art, or recognize that there is an art aspect to it, while at the same time not having the approach of you ought to be completely satisfied with just developing that art, because there are these richer arts that should be part, or that we've lost something that they're not. And it's understandable, particularly that a lot of women have a suffering of, gosh, can I not be engaging my mind in some other more intrinsically meaningful ways? Sure. Part of the answer is there is great meaning to what you're doing there, and you can develop it in a rich and somewhat artistic way. And also, let's make sure that we give you some other avenues here, recognizing that these are not. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, then if we jump back to the level of principle, I think I'm very much interested in kind of man and woman here, husband and wife, as sharing one project. And I think if we just go to the universal, one thing that's really important to bear in mind here is a husband and wife get married in order to make a household together. They get married in order to share a life, to craft a good life for and with one another, and then for and with those others that hopefully God will bless them with children, but there's always that aspect of generosity. So first of all, household as shared project. Work in the broad sense, it's always something we make together. And that this should be an attitude in everything we do, even though there's going to be a kind of division of labor unto achieving that shared work the best. I think it is critical that we start with that principle. We start with the unity. If there's going to be a division of labor, it's because we divide it so that we can do this one thing that we do together better. So I think already that's a very important thing to bear in mind, that if, and I think we should say this, there is a reason, I mean, to be careful what that reason is, that a woman will often do more of this housework than a man does. But it's very much contextualized by it's one project we share together, which, by the way, not our topic right now. I think a man is always, in everything they do together, he should be willing to take first responsibility. And so that gives a fascinating also just backdrop of then, in order to to do this one project that we share better, there's going to be a division of labor, which there is, and it's a division of labor that's rooted in natural differences and thus natural complementarity. But a man has to be willing to be kind of very much mentally, intentionally in it, and not just leaving it to her, because it's always a shared project. Indeed, one for which he takes first responsibility.
So maybe it sounds like that might be the greatest argument for why a man should participate in housework.
Explain. Why?
Well, it strikes me that if he's responsible there, and if the household is their shared project, that doing housework with his wife in the home keeps him connected, keeps him seeing and experiencing that which is their mutual project all the time. It's because a lot of times those most fundamental jobs, washing dishes, vacuuming stairs, sweeping the hall, things like that, actually kind of bring you into contact. It's almost like as though with the body of the household. So it's not just an intellectual project, a concept that we're working on together, but it's like your household has a body.
Yeah.
And when he participates in that work, it gives him an opportunity to have physical contact with the body of the household.
I think that's an absolutely great point. Love both. First of all, just the more general one of it helps him know better, experience better this project in its fullness. Men tend to be a little bit more quick to abstract versus the concrete, and a man can get very abstract about this wonderful thing that we're doing together of making this household, but then not, as it were, full powerfully the concrete. And that's where that kind of second has to feel the body. He needs to experience that to understand well and to be present well, especially if there's this aspect of it is a little bit more of a drudgery. It's so important for their shared understanding
and experience.
Their shared experience there.
Yeah.
Is there, what if someone just said right now, well, why not just completely do it 50-50? Or why not just have a man make sure that he spends time and does a lot of that work that we've said here. I mean, we've been kind of saying, well, it seems there's a reason that a woman tends to do this more, take more responsibility for it. If I asked you that, why do you think it's fitting? Why do you think it is it somehow rooted in something of nature that a woman do this more? And I don't think the answer is going to be God ordained woman to clean.
Yeah, of course.
It's just, I don't, so what is going on here? I don't think cleaning isn't intrinsically feminine. Just cleaning, qua cleaning, as cleaning. So why would it be more fitting that a woman in general be in the home doing the housework?
Yeah, I wonder if part of it is connected to her ability to see and nurture the person. Because most fundamentally, the home or the physical home is kind of the womb that nurtures and cares for the people within it. And because the nurturing and the caring for the people within it is what's her particular charisma and gift. A woman has an incredible ability to be able to see persons and therefore is better able to nurture and bring them out, so to speak. Then the ordering of this physical space around them becomes part of a way in which you care for the persons within. And so that's why very often it's even this, I think this is part of the reason why very often women are much better at kind of quickly ordering a space to be both useful, clean, safe, and beautiful, because they kind of intuit the needs of the people around them. And so they know, oh, well, in order for this to work, we need to put this here and this here and this here. Whereas a man, for him, the distribution of where things go in the house can be very mathematical. And wow, this would work. We have this well organized. And that's why often his skill in that way is helpful to a woman if she doesn't have kind of the geometric capacity of like figuring out how to make spaces work as efficiently as possible. But sometimes that a man's way of approaching that might not fully take into consideration the personal needs of the people in the environment. And so I think that's part of the reason why, first of all, when a child is very, very young, it needs the mother more physically. And so the child kind of ties the mother to the physical space. And so kind of from a practical perspective, she's simply there more. But then as the household grows and the children get older, the reality is that those physical spaces are kind of part of her way of meeting the personal, psychological, and emotional needs of the people within the household. So I think that's part of the reason.
Okay, well, I mean, I like that account because I think what is going on in what you're saying there is that the woman is in general going to do more of the housework. It's because of something kind of richer and deeper in her role in the natural complementary division. Mm-hmm. She tends to, I like how xenophonic can be easily misunderstood or kind of banalized, trivialized, stereotyped. He says inside and outside, that in general, a woman in the complementary division of work, a woman is a little bit more on the inside of the home and a man is a little bit more on the outside of the home. But when he says that, he's definitely seeing that as two parts of one project. I mean, the outside is whatever the household has an outside to it, as it were. It's part of what's being done there. But why is this rooted in nature? And it seems to me that there's a lot to talk about there. But in general, the genius of woman as loving the children and making a space warm and bright for life in the heart of the home is a foundation why, in general, especially for the sake of the children, for the sake of everyone, she should be physically, time-wise, more in the heart of the home. It's more important that a woman be physically present more regularly, more consistently, because of that aspect of kind of providing that warm heart. This is kind of obvious in the raising of children. The bodily presence and involvement of both is key, but in general, a greater bodily time presence of the woman. And if that's the case, that she's more going to be on the inside of the home, where of course the children are going to tend to be, especially when they're young, that work tends to kind of go along with it. I think there's more to unfold there, but I like how you connected it to her kind of strengths in attending to the personal, which given our bodily nature means attending to details. And that tends to include these things, among others, that we're calling the housework. Does that seem fair?
It does. And just in your saying that, something struck me that because a woman's role in the distribution of the physical household is something that's very much connected to her gift at seeing persons, I think sometimes it can be seen as, oh, well, that's her area. And man says, that's not really where my strength lies. That's her genius. And therefore kind of leave it to her. And the reality is, when a woman marries a man, when she says yes to his invitation to start this project, she's saying yes to him first and fundamentally. And so for her genius in taking care of persons through the distribution of a household to become a kind of a barrier between their ability to be together, meaning you're good at that, I'm going to let you do that at home, dear, while I go out and work, and I can't really participate in this thing that's a feminine genius. it would become kind of a force of division between the husband and the wife. That's not what she signed up for when she said yes to the project. She wants to be with her husband in this whole endeavor of building a household. It is their mutual sharing of love that creates the household. And so I think maybe that's one of the reasons it actually is a little bit painful and offensive for women when it's kind of seems to put them in a category or a box, because being put in a box separates you from the other. And the whole reason you even were open to starting such a thing is because you loved your spouse and you want to be with him in it. And so if her genius becomes the kind of place that isolates her, it's very painful.
Yeah,
and so that's why, while, maybe the work of the household isn't so specifically an expression or a practice of kind of something that is very masculine, that I would hope that the husband would consider going in and sharing that with her for the sake of not leaving her alone in this aspect of the household.
I think that's a fabulous and important point. And I say even further, not even, although that in itself would be key, for not leaving her alone, but also because in all aspects of the complementarity of man and woman, that very difference in complementarity is also a call to learn that other oneself. A key aspect, again, delicate balance, beautiful harmony, but the woman, easy example, that a woman tends to be better at kind of seeing the individual person of that baby and affirming it from the start. It's beautiful that God has given this special gift in giving femininity, as it were, to women, but also that it is a call to a man to grow in that way. So similarly here, whatever it is in woman is the basis for, if she is going to be doing more of that work, he should be very much open to growing in this ability also. And going back to the aspect of it being an art, growing in that art, it just really strikes me in saying that it's really key. Boy, and quote, traditionally minded men, I think, could make a very big mistake in kind of falling into, well, why haven't you gotten this cleaning done? I mean, particularly because it's key that we talk here today about, I think, given the common state today of the household and the great burden that it is for women, that we have to be especially alert to the kind of overburdened woman who has so much to do in the home. In general, my experience is, that's not taking away from how hard men are working out there, quote, that it tends to be more burdensome what a woman is going through in the home. And I think that goes back to that kind of Wendell Berry aspect of, in general, she's lost the kind of web of connection of other women in her community that she would be closer to, of the presence of her husband, who's more been kind of ripped away now. And this is hard for the husbands too. But we have to understand today, especially, there's a particular burden. And so it's just so horrible to think of kind of having an attitude, and I shiver to say it at times, such thoughts have crossed my mind, like, why isn't my dinner cooked? Why is this room dirty right now? I mean, even if there is, and we agree that there is, something to woman in the heart of her home with her gifts is going to be more taking up these works and kind of taking the kind of direct enacting of them most often. It doesn't mean that somehow it's just her responsibility. And if they're not getting done, that it's her fault. And this is where we have to go to, especially today, a woman is also just going to need help. She's going to need help given for so many reasons, the web of connections that have been broken, the isolation that she experiences. This has to be reckoned with, that every man must be aware that there's something overly demanding very often of a woman as regards housework in her home today. Do you think so?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I'm kind of inspired as you're saying that to go, okay, what's very clear is women need more help. Now, the question is that I want to ask you, which is a little bit kind of pushing you a little bit, because I want to see, okay, but what's in it for the man? Right now, we've been talking about how helpful it is for a woman, both maintaining her relationship with her husband and when she needs help, that her husband steps in. But let's just say that you have unlimited funds and that you can hire people to take care of all of that extra work that you have to do. Let's not even say crassly, but it's the kind of an ideal situation where the mother does all these things in her home. She's connected to her home, but she has help, so it alleviates any kind of pressure where she can really, she's not worn out by the work, and she can really attend to the persons. Is there a value in her husband participating in some of that domesticity with her? Let's say all of the I need help getting it done is taken care of. What is, and part of it, it's a little bit, I would phrase the question saying, what's your experience? Because you do give me a lot of that kind of help. And so, and I could tell you from a woman's experience what I feel like as a wife when you help me in that way. But I want to ask you, what is the benefit for a man? And maybe also, what's your experience in having done that for us? Is there something particularly masculine or fulfilling for you as a man that would kind of say, well, we should do it anyway, even though we could hire someone out? We could hire a lot of that work out, farm a lot of that work out to someone else.
Thank you for that question. I think my mind's going back to what you already said earlier. To answer your question, I'm referring to something you said earlier of participating in the body of the life, the body, as it were, of the shared life. This is really deep. This is really beautiful. It's going to be hard to put into words how powerfully I feel this aspect. Changing diapers. Let's just start with an obvious thing. Changing diapers is so important for a man. It is just so important.
Tell me about the experience.
I mean, wow. I'm being moved with emotion and just thinking about it. The way that you have to start to think and feel in ways that you haven't so much before, especially with a fragile little baby. And you can have this sense of, oh my gosh, what am I doing right now? Well, I bet I'm going to break something. I better just have my wife do this because she's going to intuitively feel better, get this better right. She's going to be better doing it. And the thing is, a woman who's just given birth to a baby, or a little while ago, immediately after giving birth, is the soft, the gentleness, the attention. She is probably going to be better at changing that baby's diaper and putting on a onesie, which still is kind of a confusion to me, getting onesies over a baby. To have to figure it out and come to grips with this. This is part of what I do. This shouldn't be, it's feeling a little foreign, but this is a key moment in my life where I say, this is for me too. And there's just so much to be said here for, I'm going to connect with my child. Yes, in a way that you might say is more like what a mother is naturally good at, but is key for a father to do too. And he's not leaving his zone, might be leaving his comfort zone, but he's not leaving a father's zone by doing these things, even though a woman might be better.
Well, it's so amazing. After all these years, it's funny. Like, I never really realized that you don't feel the same about changing diapers as I do.
I've never said out loud what I just said to you.
That's incredible. So tell me about dishes. Tell me how you feel about doing dishes.
Well, it's dishes are an extension of that. But I mean, just there's now I want to think about more the connect. We're bodily, we're embodied. Men can be so removed from the body of the household. And, right there, gosh, body, it just makes me think in the beautiful harmony that is the married life and the life of making a household. I don't want to go in this direction at all right now, but even the whole realm of sexuality and marital intimacy, I think there's a danger of men to kind of be abstracted from kind of the body of the household, but then know they kind of want to reconnect with the body of the household, as it were, there, but kind of skipping over a more full person, full-bodied bodily enactment of these things together in the home. Again, the danger of somehow, God forbid, that our, enunciate, thinking about this out loud here together, somehow be taken to imply in some narrow, reductive way that that's just what women do. I want to say most of the time, it's not just what women do. It's marriage, there's a sharing of all these things. If it's something worth doing or if it's something that demands being done, it could always in some way be worth our doing together, unless it's something that, like giving birth, obviously isn't something, but there's very few things that are simply reserved to the one. And that kind of work, I'm convinced, at one and the same time, I affirm and am so grateful that you take the first part on that. I need to take first responsibility and be very supportive of you and affirming of you and coming in and helping you, because you can't get it all done yourself. And sometimes we need to hire outside help. But rather than just hiring outside help, to go back to your point, it's something we should experience together. We should experience bodily together, at least to some extent. And then that helps us have a greater closeness when we're not actually doing it together. We still have a bodily feel for what one another are doing.
Mm-hmm. That's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm surprised how, I just take it for granted our being together in the project. But the reality is I have a very different experience with these things than you do, because you're a man, even though we're doing the same things.
I can tell by the look in your eyes right now, discovering that we just learned something.
Well, I just need to go back to dishes. I'm so sorry. I've asked you that, and you went to 30,000 feet, which is awesome because you're a philosopher, and that's what philosophers do. But you're also very much a man, and I want to just talk about your experience doing dishes. That is one thing that you have been completely committed to in our household. So much so that when our youngest son was about 3 years old, my dad said to him, "Someday you'll grow up and you'll be the head of the household." And he said, right away, without pausing, "No, I don't want to be the head of the household." My dad didn't really pursue that, but in my mind I thought, well, why does this 3-year-old have such a strong feeling about it? I said, well, why do you not want to be the head of the household? He said, oh, because I don't like doing dishes, which of course was hysterical because he had never done any dishes. But his impression of the head of the household is the head of the household always does the dishes, because that's where you are every night after we have dinner. You have decided that is going to be something that I commit myself to, that I do the dishes so that my wife doesn't make dinner and do the dishes. I suspect that your approach to your experience in doing that is very different from my experience of washing up after meals. So I just want to try you out. Tell me how the man goes into that. And this is not like once in a while you swoop down and do the dishes. You do the dishes every single time. Now, of course, the children help, etc. But you take that as your responsibility as a way of protecting me. So just tell me about that.
I don't know if I can tell you how the man does. I can tell you about how I do. Mm-hmm. And obviously men are different. We're all different. We have to bear that in mind even when we talk about natural differences and natural complementarity. But I can jump out just a little bit. I just have such a strong sense of how much laborious work goes into making the household that I'm so grateful that we make together. And it's just evident to me that you can't do it alone. I don't want you to do it alone. I don't want you to be overwhelmed. And so first of all, I need to do this to help. I will say that's kind of the first thing. But then beyond that, golly, I almost want to go and meditate and go for a long walk in the woods. And I spend a lot of time just there. I mean, I try to pray. I try to, think about higher things. I try to, it's a nice opportunity for kind of discipline. I'm not having a lot of fun right now, but I know this is so important. I just have this deep sense of I'm serving. I'm taking care of people right now. That's the thing that I could say most clearly. I know I'm taking care of you, and I'm taking care of our children, and I'm making the home that I'm so grateful to be in. I'm making it possible for it to go in a very obvious, concrete way that's very different than just making money. And again, Wendell Berry points out a man's place in the home, he says, gets completely abstracted, removed by the mere connection of money. The kind of classic 1950s man who's who, and not just in many different. It doesn't take away from the fact that it's fitting, by and large, that a man, particularly in the context where we are now, where it's so necessary that you have a job, where he's making a certain salary, that is a key way, and he should see that and experience that as a way of taking care of his family. I need to take care of you and the children in a different way, and that's an opportunity for me to do it and to relieve you. And I hope all husbands will see it as an opportunity, A, simply to help, B, more deeply to experience the embodied serving. A husband and wife are in this together. We can do this together. Yeah. Yeah, my mind is very full. Help me here.
Well, I just wanted to ask if it's okay if I share my experience of you doing dishes for me.
Please do.
Of course, my first experience in you're doing dishes for me is simply, wow, I'm so grateful that I'm not standing at the sink right now. It's just relief. But over the years, as I've kind of watched it, I realized you don't love doing dishes. It's hard for you. And to look at your back as you're facing the sink and I see you going for another dish, I realize what it takes on your part is incredible fortitude and courage and commitment. And you're doing that to protect me and take care of me. And so while someone gave us an apron that on it says, no man was ever shot doing the dishes, which, is kind of har. But my experience is that the manliness of your back as you're turned to the sink, of standing there and doing the thing that you'd really just assume not. You don't love it any more than I do, and yet you do it every day. And so to me, it's an experience of real manliness, of the man who will suffer the intellectual discomfort of, I don't want to do this in order to take care of me.
Well, that's very, I'm gratified, humbled, and I could have done a lot better there, but I'm certainly very happy to hear that.
And so while the work itself may seem more feminine because it's the work that a woman naturally does to take care of persons, for a man to have first of all, take on kind of a manly first responsibility for those activities, and therefore says, I will go in and I will help if necessary. The insight of love to see my wife is overwhelmed, overworked. If I do this, it will help her. This is incredible. To me, strikes me as a very masculine characteristic, and the fortitude to continue doing that, which is difficult. That isn't as intuitive as other kind of more obvious masculine pursuits or exercises of strengthening, to actually do something that requires you to really exercise moral fortitude is maybe for me at the heart of what it means to be a man in the household.
Well, I think I'm very grateful to hear that. Here, to me, is the main thing, though. It gives me an opportunity to recognize what you are doing in spades all day long in ways that I am not. And I mean, that's really the thing here. I mean, again, it brings us together in knowledge, in experiential knowledge. We should be experiencing those things together. Frankly, more much so. Well, should a woman go out and get involved in the man's work at his job? This is part of the challenge of so many men's jobs are so remote from the home. It is going to have to be that way, and we're going to go about that business. And the more he can share with his wife, at least in bringing some understanding of it, and sharing his hopes and his challenges, there is very important. But the more directly shared work is the work of the home. And it's more fitting then that a man be directly involved there. And if nothing else, in addition to the other things we've said, it leads to a deeper appreciation of her, a knowledge and appreciation, and perhaps also then leads to recognizing at times, if possible, if financially possible, as fitting, to possibly hire some help. Also, again, this depends on circumstances. You wouldn't ever want to hire all this out, because it is so, by just a natural providence, such a beautiful way of being and living together and serving one another. But as an opportunity for men to help, to learn more about himself, to have insight into who his wife is and what she does for him and for the children and for others, and just again to have it be more obviously a shared project of making a home together. Those seem to me to be a lot of really good reasons
To do the dishes.
and to be involved in other ways too. We've used, of course, the dishes as an example, but well, we have a lot more to think about. I think we're going to keep talking about this, and I might just need to. Well, maybe I don't have to go for a walk to think about it. Maybe I should think about it a little bit more while I'm actually doing the dishes. Well, baby, thanks for this conversation. Good to be with you all.
Thanks for tuning in this episode of The Intentional Household. If you've enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and leave a rating or review. If you have any topic requests, please send them to lifecraftgroup@gmail.com. For our Wednesday reflections, free courses, reading groups, and live events, please visit life-craft.org.